Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com. I'm John Marino. We are produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by Entergy. We thank everyone at Entergy for all they've done for our communities in this area throughout the years. By Robeson Oil, the house that service built. By Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard. And by Lipolis Electric, don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis. Here on Westchester Talk Radio, The Cup of Joe political show, we are joined by the supervisor of the town of North Castle. North Castle encompasses Banksville, Armonk, and North White Plains. Mike Schiliro, we thank you for joining us here again on Westchester Talk Radio. How are you as we seem to be moving now towards a post-COVID world?
I'm doing good, John. It's good to see you again, and hopefully we can do this soon in person. But COVID has made us all more resourceful, and these types of things are now very normal. But all is good by me, and things, yes, are starting to loosen up a bit. In a safe way, I will remind people, but yes, it's amazing to think, I said to somebody this morning, you think back 14 months, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it was 14 months ago where this whole thing really started to get some inertia, and nobody thought it would be this long until we're just starting to thaw in a good way.
Yeah, time has flown by. I hate to say it, but that 14 months has gone by really fast, and we've learned to do things on the fly a different way, whether it be in the media on this end here, in government on your end, in any line or business or industry. I think everybody obviously adjusted and found new ways to do things as we went along. I don't think we'll ever go back to the kind of world we had totally before. This is, I hope, a brave new world as we move into, as we say, this post-COVID world. How do you look at what the CDC announced a few days ago about wearing masks or not wearing masks or being vaccinated or not vaccinated? We're on the honor system right now. That's what it comes down to. Are we honorable enough to be able to live like this?
I think we are. I think regardless if people have really embraced the seriousness of this situation or not, I think if you look at the wide swath of the country, yes, I think we can put some trust in our citizens, and I think the new guidelines are very encouraging. As a town, I remind people we're at the lowest form of government. It's extremely important. Some more argue, town government and schools and school boards, et cetera, are some of the most important things people should lean into because that's what affects their daily lives the most. But we rely on guidelines from the national level through New York State, through the county, and then it's fed out to local towns and villages like us. So we're encouraged by the new guidelines from the CDC. We waited for New York State to embrace those. And there's still some confusion on it. And yes, there's some honor system there about vaccinated and not vaccinated. And somebody just showed me yesterday, there's an app you can get on your phone. I didn't know that, where you could punch in your information and you get like your own UPC code or something, and a facility, a restaurant, a ballpark can scan that, and then they know that you're fully vaccinated. So there's all these new things that are in our lives that we didn't think they'd be there ever.
Interesting point you bring up about New York State. Do you think the state is procrastinating as to whether or not they want us to reopen more? Connecticut made a fast move to reopen. New Jersey Governor Murphy says, hey, wait a second, we don't have enough people around the state vaccinated yet to be able to even think about this at the moment. The early indications from New York State was, let's pull back and be careful. And then a few days later, it seemed like, well, maybe we might reopen more, and we're still waiting on this. What do you think is the delay? Is it just a matter of waiting for the research?
Yeah, I think, I can't tell you exactly. What I can tell you is when, as a local elected official, when we make a decision or when we don't make a decision right away or we are deliberating about something, I often find that if there are people in the public that are misrepresenting what we may be doing or not doing or rushing to a judgment, they usually don't have all the information. And it's okay, it happens. But I see that a lot where I have to explain to a large group of people, or it could be one individual, to say, hey, you don't have all the background, so put trust in us that we know what we're doing, and then we'll make whatever decisions have to be made. So when things like this happen with New York State, I know people can get frustrated, and politics may seep into it. It's okay. I presume that they know a lot more than we do, and they know a lot more of the things that they have to pay attention to. And in the end, the sun will rise, the sun will set, we'll be okay. If they're a little bit slower than Connecticut or another state, we'll be fine. As long as we're starting to thaw and we're all being safe, that's what's important. I don't use up a lot of energy worrying about, could they have done this a day quicker or a week quicker, or, did they do it too quickly? We'll be okay. It'll happen when it'll happen.
From what you see, are we reopening in this area too fast, too slow, or just about right?
I'd say kind of like the Three Bears story, just about right with the porridge, where, everybody's been extremely careful throughout. And there's some outliers, but for the most part, everybody's extremely careful. The retail businesses, retail sales are up. Our restaurants have been doing okay and surviving through COVID. And now things are really opening up, and it's very exciting to look at our local restaurants and how full they are, and people really leaning into the outdoor dining. We actually have a hearing tomorrow on our outdoor dining piece. So there's some good things that have come out of a lot of the tragedy parts of COVID, that we've learned more about ourselves, learn how to be resourceful, learn more of what we like and what's important to all of us, and what we don't, and what we shouldn't be wasting time on. And I could say one little sliver is people really like eating outside. They did before, but they really enjoy it. It just seems to add to their enjoyment of whatever they're eating. So we're really trying to continue to help the restaurants there.
Mm-hmm. You look at how restaurants had to redo their business models, obviously, and go to an outdoor way of dining. Makes you wonder if restaurants now have too many people who want to eat outdoors. What do? You take the overflow and send them inside? People might say, well, I don't want to eat indoors anymore. What do we do then? How do we handle that? Which is a good problem to have, right?
Yeah, it usually levels out in that, a restaurant's only going to have so much staff. And so they may have almost more seats than maybe they could even use. But I find in the warmer months, the better climate, if people eat outside, they prefer to, and often you'll see a lot of empty tables inside, and that's just the way it is. And we are also concerned about parking, and we're spending a lot of time on making sure that we have enough parking if some of the outdoor dining has been expanded. And we're also, in general, adding more parking, at least in downtown Armonk, in the hamlet of Armonk, where it's the busiest, I should say. Interesting also is if you speak to a lot of restaurant owners, not just in our town, but in the area, they have a hard time right now finding enough people to work. So they're very busy, but they've got to be very focused on maintaining their level of service. And some restaurants are actually pulling back, and they're taking less people than they normally would, because they want to make sure that their service is where it should be, so those customers keep coming back. Because once you have a bad experience or two, and it's because you just don't have enough staff, that may impact those customers coming back. So business owners are very astute at looking at all things to continue to make sure that they're successful. And it's just presented lots of challenges. It's COVID and this economy and all things COVID, I should say.
I was reading a couple of articles. Ironically, you talked about how restaurants don't have enough people to work now. Just read a couple of articles before we started the show about that and how that's affecting this area and so many other areas too. Throughout the pandemic, and especially now as we reopen more and more, and people want and need a bigger piece of that financial pie to make up for what they've lost, have businesses throughout North Castle and throughout the surrounding area, from what you can tell, have they worked together well enough to make sure everybody survives this?
I can't speak to it specifically, but I could say generally, yes. We all talk to enough people. I know I do, to try to get a good read, take the temperature of different industries, different people. And there's still people struggling out there. Let's not pretend they're not. And those are the people that continue to need some help. But at the same time, we want to make sure that people are incented to work, not disincented to work. And that's a tricky balance. The government on the federal level has a job cut out to work through that and figure out how do we continue to help the people that really need help, and how do we make sure that people that don't need as much help have incentive to get back to work and earn, et cetera. So I can tell you that it's like they're rewriting the textbooks on, what happened in this COVID environment, because back in March and April, nobody knew which way was up. My day job is a banker and a lender, and a lot of concerns about lending and real estate, commercial, residential, all those things. And then after a few months, people started moving more into the suburbs. The inventory wasn't great enough for the demand, so prices started to go up. They're still going up. Nobody was really sure about what's going to return to New York City. And a lot of models say it's going to be split, a hybrid version, at least for now. Some people are getting used to working from home. Some people like it, but they really need to be back in the office. So there's probably a year or two or more that things still the smoke's got to settle on everything and figure out where that new normal is. I believe that we're in sort of a transitioning to that new normal, but nobody really knows what it's going to look like. And then there's also preparation for hopefully not a next COVID, but it could be. So how do we react quickly? How do we adjust our office space so that we could distance if we have to? How do we handle mask wearing, et cetera? So all those things are now part of your planning, how a company's going to run and where they're going to have their employees. I know that there's a lot of young people, especially in this country, that the companies I work for have discovered, we can allow a lot of flexibility and more quality of life for them, and they could live wherever they want.
Mm-hmm.
They could work for a company in New York, but they could move to California and they're still doing as capable a job as they were, depending on what their job is. So a lot that we've learned, and that's just the resiliency of this country and people in general around the world and around the globe in figuring it out.
You talk about banking, real estate friend I spoke to a few days ago who works in Manhattan. I called her and I said, things getting better. And in so many words, she said to me, another stupid question, I'm going to hang up on you. I have to ask you, because it differs and varies for everybody in what you consider good, better, worse, etc. Banking, real estate around Westchester, around the tri-state area. Are we moving now in the right direction with that? Or is this a real step-by-step process here?
No, I think it's been moving in the right direction for a while, especially with the emphasis on more people wanting to be in the suburbs, and then in certain cases near a rail line if they need to, although the rail line is a little less important now. But when we get to that new normal level, it may be more important than it is now. But it depends on, the question about New York City. I was in a month or two ago, and I was in a residential area for 2 days and a night, and you wouldn't know there was COVID other than the masks. It was as busy as you could imagine. And again, the resiliency, the structures in the streets and people eating in the streets and people following protocols, et cetera. Go to Midtown, a little bit different. Less people are in the offices. I worked in Midtown a long time ago. It was so busy. So it depends on where you are. There are property owners in the city that are landlords that have figured out very quickly, hey, we're going to have to drop our rents to a level to really attract people. And I know so many people moving into the city because they look at it as a bargain. So again, we're adapting to the new economy, the new environment, and you have to figure out what works. So if that apartment rented for $5,000 2 years ago, well, maybe that same apartment's $3,500 and somebody's going to snap it up.
And by the way, she's in that category, Manhattan real estate person who's used to getting the $5,000 and is not happy with getting the $3,500 now.
Right.
Like I say, it's a matter of perspective, obviously. With
exactly.
Six here of one and a half dozen of the other over there. So, and you bring it all together and make it work. School. Yep. I just walked by a school before we began our show, watching school, or at least the students who attended today, let out. Schools. I know it's very late in the school year. A month ago, Can we still get everybody back in class, or should we by the end of the year, or just wait at this point until September and see where things are at, hope for the best and get everybody back in then?
I keep very close contact with our school districts in that touch North Castle, meaning Valhalla and Byram Hills. And I will just say in general, our school districts, but all of them, it's really I hope somebody studies it and writes a book or a paper on it. It's been nothing short of incredible that our educators and our administrators had to re-engineer our education system within really a few weeks, a month or so. And they did it. They figured it out. And our kids are still learning. Yeah, it's different. And kids want to get back to school. Kids can get back to school now, at least in our districts if they want to. And things look, at least by design, look to be getting back to real normal in the fall. But they've done just an incredible job of figuring out how to re-engineer our education system and make sure our kids are getting the same education they would have normally. And I thank them every time I see them or every time I talk to them. So yeah, things are normalizing. I don't know that anybody's in a huge rush to get to. We've got less than 1 month left of school. So if you don't need to take any unnecessary risks, why do that? And then let's move on to the fall semester. But they're still making strides in trying to get as many kids as they can safely into the schools. And I can't say enough about the effort that the school districts made, especially for the kids in our town, that they had to re-engineer education. It's exactly what they did. I don't know how else to say it. And they did it. And they did it incredibly well. Not just a Band-Aid, incredibly well. So
I'm
kudos
also
to all of them.
mindset that kids, if they really want to learn, they're going to learn. Like when we went to school, we had our favorite subjects and topics and teachers and classrooms and friends, et cetera, and others where we think about, how can I get out of that today? Or maybe for the rest of the school year. So I've always thought that if a kid wants to learn, a child will learn if he or she wants to learn. And I think this proves what happened here over the last 14 months has proven that.
And some kids have struggled. You know, we've heard all stories. Some kids have thrived home. Some kids have really struggled home. So it's not one size fits all. But in general, they had to do it. They did it, and they did it exceedingly well. And our kids are the benefactors, for that. So.
Michael
Really
Schiliro is the town supervisor in North Castle encompassing Armonk, Banksville, and North White Plains. Mike Schiliro. As we move into the budget years, we're well into the county budget year. The state budget adopted about 6 weeks ago. The trickle-down effect, you talk about local government and how local government is not to say underneath state and county government, but there is a hierarchy, there is a trickle-down effect. And we also had the federal stimulus package under President Joe Biden. We had a federal stimulus package or two under Donald Trump. Locally in North Castle, have we gotten our fair share all the way around from the feds and the county and the state too?
We have. I believe you and I touched on this a little bit the last time we did this many months ago. And I always tend to take a more conservative approach on budgetary matters and the finance piece of government. I'm a big believer in businesses and governments, local, state, county, federal, tightening their belt where they need to, making sure the reserves are in good order, preparing for situations like this, whether it's a recession, whether it's a pandemic-induced recession, whatever it is. You know, we counsel businesses to do that, and government should do that at every level. And the stimulus package, which had a state-local component to it, is helpful to all. We spent a fair amount of money that we otherwise wouldn't have spent during COVID, and we survived, and the money certainly is helpful. But you just hope that lessons are learned. I know that when I got on the board in 2008, the recession started that December of 2007. And, I learned a lot for sure. And we all did. and we were able to restructure how we budget and how we run our finances. So we were better prepared for a situation like this. Now, I never thought I'd face another one of these while I was in office. I was hoping that the strength of our finances would benefit a future board. Ended up benefiting us now. So we were concerned, but we weren't losing sleep at night. But I know a lot of municipalities really were nervous because nobody knew what the future was going to look like and what the numbers were going to look like, and would sales tax and consumer spending return, what was going to go on. What we've seen, interestingly, all around at least the county is because people couldn't do what they normally would do and go to eat where they're going to eat and vacation where they're going to vacation, they started to reallocate their money on their properties. And most building departments like ours are handling 3 to 4 times the volume that they normally do.
Wow.
Smaller projects. So you're not going to have a $2 million commercial project. You're going to have a $20,000 or $30,000 residential project, but the volume of applications is dramatically greater. And we've all seen that throughout the county, and there's just not enough staffing or skilled people in those positions. So we call them customers. So we make sure that we tell our customers as best we can their expectation levels, or when they'll have responses from us and get permits to do their work. And a lot of people are aware of what's happened with the cost of lumber. A piece of plywood, might have been $16, is now $70, or a 2x4. I mean, the prices went through the roof. They're starting to come down now, but even then, construction was still brisk. People are still doing work even at those prices. So that tells you that the economy is still strong, despite any additional stimulus that went into it. People have been busy and spending their money differently even before a lot of those stimulus things happened. So we're still somewhat bullish on all things, especially the economy. But budget, the budgeting piece is, the way we approach it in our town since I got on the board is every budget year we're in a crisis. We assume we're in a crisis, and you can't get comfortable ever. We actually have our audit presentation tomorrow night at our board meeting, and it's a good audit. We feel very comfortable at our financials, but we never let our foot off the pedal. We always have to be very focused on it. And that serves our customers well, our residents, that we're there, we're the fiduciaries of the town, and we have to take it very, very seriously. So I do think that if on a broader level, if businesses and governments at all levels leaned into it far greater and looked at, what happens if, and they're better prepared for downturns, I think that would serve everybody well.
I've spoken over the last 3 decades plus to many a public official through the years around this tri-state area, and our talks through the years, and especially last time back in December, and you touched on it again now, I've always been impressed by the way you always point out that it's great to have ideas, it's great to have a game plan, but you always point out it has to be paid for. There has to be a way to pay for it, and you are always talking about that, as I see. Are you always trying to think of new ways of how to pay for it?
Yes, but at the same time, how to do more with less. So figuring out if there are additional revenue streams, but at the same time, figuring out how do we do things better, more efficient for less. And that's it's interesting. It's a concept I knew of, but I really learned more from Michael Bloomberg, who was a former mayor of New York City. And I happened to see him over the weekend. I didn't get a chance to engage with him, but if I got to, I was going to say to him, hey, that whole do more with less, I really take that seriously. But he was real good at that. He was very fiscally conservative, and you just can't you can't take your foot off the pedal. I've studied our budgets for a couple of decades now, and I saw where trends were less favorable and where some things needed to be reversed. And just because, it's a good example, John, if let's say we discovered, $2 million of new revenue next year. The idea isn't to spend that, right? The idea is, how do we still make the government as efficient as we can? And how do we try to ease the burden, the tax burden on our customers, our residents, versus saying, gee, we got all this money in, what do we spend it on? Now, you need to have right-sized government. You need to know what your capital projects are. You need to know what's going to improve the quality of life of people in your town. And, you will look to spend money if you know that there's money that needs to be spent, but perhaps at the same time, you can ease a tax burden on the residents. But it's all in the same conversation. And like I said, if you stay at it constantly and don't let your foot off the pedal, I just think it serves your constituents well, because I say it a lot, but I say it seriously. I call them customers.
You do. Yeah,
and I ask our employees to call them customers, because if you call somebody a customer, you're more likely going to treat them as a customer. And if you treat them like you might lose their business, even though you can't lose their business unless they move from town, it's a different mentality, and we always want to try to help them. Now, we can't always. I have always people that might be upset with me, but we really got to work hard to make it a good experience for them, regardless of their interaction with us. And in the end, provide a good product, provide a good brand to them. So our library is great, our parks are great, our roads are great. We're finishing our road project next year, and that we'll have paved every road in town over the last 8 or 9 years. And that was some project, but we did it, right? And roads are, if I had to learn one thing over my time serving, is, man, I don't know how many more important things there are than roads. Good quality road that you can drive on.
Into the infrastructure in town, which we've talked about before. With the warm weather months here, cracks in the roads appear, things that you never noticed were there before, they happen to show up too. Roads, bridges, tunnels, drinking water, broadband, and so much more that makes up infrastructure and what we need to live on a day-to-day basis. How have you been able to put this plan together over the last 8-9 years, where other areas you drive through or walk through, different areas where you see the same cracks in the road for the past 14, 15 years and nobody does a thing about it, and they know it's there?
You just need to prioritize and then make a plan and be patient about executing it. But the priority piece is really the important piece. You certainly need the economics and the finance part of it, but we know that roads are critically important to people. And by the way, if we paved 80 miles of road, but we didn't pave your road yet, John, you're still not going to be unhappy, right? So, and I tell that to people right up front. I say, hey, we may not be paving your road this year, and we know just because I'm paving your neighbor's road doesn't make you happy, but we can pave every road the same day, right? So, as an example, we actually passed a $10 million bond back when COVID started. We were thinking about it. We passed it, but we didn't use it. And we had good counsel from our town administrator, Kevin Hay, and our director of finance, Abasura. We worked together as a board, and we decided, let's approve it, but let's not spend it. Let's pause.
That's interesting.
Have it there if we need it. And our goal was to, instead of paving the rest of the roads we have over the next 8 years or so, or 10 years, let's pave them all in the next year or two. So what we did, and I just signed the bond agreements. We just secured, I think it was almost a $9 million bond at 1.38%. It's not free, but it's almost free. So what we do now is we can accelerate the paving, so our customers don't have to wait 7 or 8 years for their road to be paved. We're paying minimal interest, but it's more than worth it. And then the money that we would have used every year to pave going up the next 10 years or so, we use that money to pay back the bond. So it's just, to me, a smarter way to do government finance. And that money, that extra interest that we're paying, number one, the cost that we're paving this year would be dramatically different if we paved in 7 or 8 years because of inflation. And at the same time, even if it were the same, to me, that cost of that extra interest is worth it to improve the quality of lives for people in town. So that's just an example of some of the infrastructure that we do. We have projects going on. We're finally putting bathrooms in IBM Park. That's been quite an engineering challenge, but we're redoing those and putting new bathrooms in. We're doing a major renovation in our North White Plains Community Center. We've been trying to do that for years. We're also putting showers in there, so that's going to be an alternative shelter in the event that we have an emergency. And we have our self-contained quasi Red Cross unit called North Castle Citizen Corps Council, NC4. I was actually one of the founders of it right after 9/11. And when there's an emergency, like let's call it Hurricane Sandy, we set up our own shelter. Now we're able to set up 2 shelters. We staff it with town volunteers. We don't have to wait for the Red Cross. And we can open a shelter in an hour, literally. So that's volunteer driven. So very little cost on our side. So we're always looking to improve our facilities, improve our parks, improve our library where we can. We have a lot of infrastructure projects going on there, including our branch in the North White Plains Community Center. Roads, all things that we can do to improve the quality of life for people in town. But you have to be able to pay for it, right? You have to know where the money's coming from, and you want to be wise about it. And you can't just spend willy-nilly and then hopefully, it works out in the future. Not while I'm on the board. We watch it very, very tightly. And so far, I think it's worked well. We've managed our taxes and our tax increases, built our reserves even stronger. And I know not everybody's happy. I know that people have concerns on various things in town. But as long as we're putting our best foot forward and working hard for the customers, that's what's important.
I guess what it comes down to when you think about paving streets and roads, et cetera, that small street down the block there or that cul-de-sac, that's somebody's 684, Route 22 or 120, and that counts just as much.
It so does. We get so many, much fewer now, I will say. When I first got on the board, I think I've shared some metrics with you before, but there's a rating system, a PCR rating system for roads that goes from 0 to 100. When I first got on the board, we were in the low 60s, which is below average. Right now, we're living in the high 80s. So our goal was to get into the low 70s, which was average. And we did that. And now we're into the mid to high 80s. A big piece of credit goes to our Budget and Finance Committee, who put countless hours into helping us do the analysis going back now 7 or 8 years and making recommendations to us. These are volunteers, no politics. They just, on certain projects now, they come in, they help us study something. They also help us with the budget every year. They provide recommendations to us. And it's invaluable. I wish every community had a group of people like this that were just willing to help when needed. Now it's more project-based, but we're able to provide their insight and their study just for the benefit of their own community. And I say this all the time too, is, community is usually only as great as the people that put time into it. We've got 140 plus volunteers and all various committees, et cetera. That's just incredible. For the town. Yeah, that's a lot of concern. Forget about the library and the hundreds of volunteers there and all the coaches and the schools and all the programs and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And, and you think about it, that's what makes the community, just countless people that are giving for free to the town. A lot of it for our kids to make it what it is, or religious organizations, really houses of worship, everything.
Or as Hillary would say over in Chappaqua and Newcastle, it takes a village, right?
It does. Or a town.
Or a town. In this case, the town of North Castle, Banksville, Armonk, and North White Plains. Mike Schiliro is the supervisor of the town of North Castle. Mike, as we head now towards summer, spring only a few weeks left, and I love the fall in town. I remember back in the early 90s, the soccer tournaments I used to go to early on Saturday mornings over at Byram Hills High School on nice, chilly Saturday mornings and be part of that there. Long time ago, went by fast, but you got a great athletic community there at Byram Hills and from Alphatown, the athletic director, Rob, and his assistants there, et cetera. And as we hit the warm weather months here now, when we talk about what to do outdoors in North Castle, summer of 2021, what events are out there, festivals, tournaments, etc., that you can think of that we should be able to attend normally as long as vaccines continue to work and we continue to move, hopefully, into a post-COVID world?
First one that comes to mind is our summer concert series, which we had last year safely with COVID. It was a huge success. The bands loved it because the bands that we had been cooped up in their basements or their houses and couldn't play. So a lot of them, it was the first time they got to meet in months with no rehearsal just to play. So they loved it. So we've got another 4-part concert series this summer. You can go to our website or the rec department website and get the information. And our pool is going to be opening Memorial Day. We've got town camp for the kids, and they're working on finalizing the program there. And there's always things going on. I can't speak specifically of all the events coming up, even in the fall. Folderol is unfortunately not happening this year. The Donut and Cider Festival may happen in the fall. But when you talk about just our park system and our food scene and hiking, et cetera, from North White Plains to Armonk to Banksville, there's some terrific parks and historic places in North White Plains. Miller Park is one of my favorite in town. It's the site of Revolutionary War action, and it's just a very peaceful, pretty place. And there's some real good food down in North White Plains. I do say that we are the pizza capital of Westchester County because whenever they rank the best pizza places, we always have the most of any town. So I'm proud about that, and I love pizza. I won't single out places right now, but there are 2 great pizza places in North White, and there's several in the hamlet of Armonk. But the hiking trails that we have, the walks, the food scene, in downtown Armonk, people love to park and sometimes do a food crawl. We do it. I do it with my wife, where you can go to one place for maybe a drink or a cocktail and an appetizer, go somewhere else for dinner, go somewhere else for a second course, go somewhere else for dessert and coffee, whatever. Things are alive. People are outside. And
Armonk's Chamber of Commerce in August, right? Their annual festival.
Right. Right.
Our old friend Sam Morrell and the Arts and Theater works he puts together during the summer also too.
He had a pause on that, but and Sam's the one who started the concerts in the park years ago. So
knowing Sam, he's working hard at it right now.
And the chamber now sponsors the concerts in the park run by the rec department. So everybody's working together, everybody's working hand in hand. Things that people want to know about events in our town, it's very easy to go onto our Facebook page or sign up on Instagram or go to our website or go to the parks website. The Armonk Outdoor Art Show will happen again in the fall, weather and pandemic permitting.
Right.
And that is, I think it's now nationally ranked. No, pretty sure definitely 2, maybe 1, but definitely second ranked outdoor tourist art show in the country. I mean, it's really incredible.
Yeah.
Volunteers, right? There's a couple of paid people, but it's hundreds of volunteers work to put that on. And that money, what happens? Goes back to the town,
right?
Back for programming for the library, back to our residents. So,
and I've noticed that throughout the town, through the years, all the different events I've been to, it's all community working together. And I think in North Castle, things come together a bit differently. This is not to compare one to the other. In North Castle, things come together a bit differently, I think, than they do in some other communities. And that's a testament to you as the leader and to the people in town who work together to make it work.
Yeah, it's I'll pull myself out of it. It's just the people in our town that love to give back. And they take it seriously that, the town is only
proud of their town too.
Yeah. Town's only as good as the amount of work that you put into it. And, preserving certain things. We have something going on now that I don't remember if I touched on with you or not, but aside from really looking at development projects and smart development, we're also embarking on a purchase in conjunction with the Westchester Land Trust, where they are buying, and we're part of it, a 63-acre lot that I've wanted to get in the, off of the private holding for 14 years since I've been on the board. And finally, we're very close. They're in contract. We're contributing $250,000 to the conservation easement. They've secured $1 million grant from New York State DEC because the water, the land, and there's a body of water there, are on top of a lot of important aquifers, and 90% of our town is well and septic. So that's an exciting, for me, because I've worked on it for so long, an exciting acquisition that once we close and Westchester Land Trust takes title, we're going to look to do something there, even if it's just a passive park, but 63 pristine acres with a body of water that won't be built on, right? That will never be developed. We did that not too long ago with another, I think, 47 or 57 acres out in the Eastern District near Mayanis River Gorge. So there's a balance. Right, we want to embrace and look at smart development and improve the town in that way. At the same time, keeping an eye on the environment and our 26 square miles, and where there's opportunities to preserve, we do that as well. And we just try to have a balance.
Open space preservation for decades has been a key issue around the tri-state area. And I think more and more we are understanding that not something to fight, it's something we have to do to keep, when you look at it, really part of our history and culture and what we are. So, and that's the way I was on Long Island in the 80s before I came to Westchester, and the entire fight there about preserving the East End all the way west, and so much in the Shoreham nuclear power plant controversy back then. And you see decades later, it's just a cycle. And what are we doing now, 35, 40 years later? Preserving what we should have been preserving all along.
Correct.
Mike Schiliro, I have to say, that throughout the pandemic and throughout COVID, business proceeded in the town of North Castle pretty much the way it should overall. It did.
Yeah, I feel like it did. And it's been, I tell you, such an incredible experience. I think about some of these seminal moments, during this whole process. One that stands out in my mind is, a doctor that reached out to me right when COVID started that, they needed masks, and they were asking for mask donations. And somehow I got instructions on how to make masks. And I circulated through the town, and I asked people, if you don't have masks, could you make them? And all of a sudden, these seamstresses popped up all over town, and I had a bin on my front lawn. And every night, these little elves would come and drop masks. I must have collected, 1,500, 2,000 homemade masks. You just think about that for a second. You think about how the stages of this, where you couldn't even get a mask, so you couldn't go outside. And people were making masks out of whatever fabric they had in their house and trying to figure out where they can get elastic. If they didn't have elastic, they'd figure out a different way to do it. And then we went through all these phases of the vaccine. And then, who was qualified to get the vaccine? And you had to wait for months to get the vaccine. Now you can walk in somewhere and get the vaccine. All these different stages of all these different seminal moments throughout this process. But through it all, I feel lucky that I live in a community that I live in, and it's resilient. And I still believe in people and decency and civility. And I know people's nerves have been strained over these last 14 months or so, but I have faith in people. I always have faith in people, and I think that'll prove out in the end to be sort of.
The town website is it townofnorthcastle.com?
www.northcastle.com. Yeah.
I know there is much there, and as you shared with us some of what you could of what's on the website, and go to that to find out more about the town of North Castle, all the latest and what's coming up during the summer. And if you'd like to get in touch with the town supervisor, Michael Schiliro, as well. Mike, we thank you as always for joining us here on Westchester Talk Radio. Great to see you again. Let's do this not too long down the road again, okay?
John, always great to see you, and soon in person we'll do it. Yeah,
eventually in person we'll get this done once everybody says it's okay enough for all of us to get out there together. If we have to arm bump or fist bump, we'll do that, but hopefully we can shake hands by then.
Would love to. Have a great summer, and I always appreciate you having me on. I really do.
Great to have you, and hope to see you around North Castle during the summer. Maybe at the Armonk Chamber Festival in August if it comes off. That'd be a great place.
Would love it.
All right, you take care. Michael Schiliro here, Town of North Castle Supervisor on Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com. Produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by Entergy. We thank everybody at Entergy for all they've done for us throughout the decades here in Westchester and the surrounding tri-state area. Also by Robeson Oil, the house that service built. Then White Plains Hospital, plus Michael Labriola Landscape Design and Construction in the town of North Castle, headquartered in Armonk. I'm John Marino, and catch all of our Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, and Fairfield County Talk Radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative, YouTube.